Welcome back. Well, September is National Sewing Month, so here to share more about the past art of sewing with his antique sewing machine is celebrity historian Raffi Andonian with his always fashionable pink bow tie. Happy to have you. Thank you so much for being with us. So talk to me about the history of sewing.
Yeah, and I thought of ZZ Top when you mentioned the fashionable bow tie. They come running just as fast as they can because every girl comes, something like sharp dress man or loves a short dress man. That's not the song, but you know what I'm talking about. But the sewing is really kind of a debate about technology back in the day, the way we kind of think of phones today, believe it or not. So, for example, sewing was something that was seen as an art and a craft that should be done with the hands in the mid-19th century, and kind of the supple touch of the nerve and the bone. These are kind of the language that you would actually see in the documents. But there were a lot of people that loved adopting the technology of the sewing machine that we're seeing here because of the fact that you could do, as one person put it, a whole year's work in a week. And that allowed women to be able to participate in social circles more instead of being stuck at home making all this clothing, for example. So some people really loved it because of the sort of social improvement of the technology. Now, the sewing machine that you see here is about 100 years old, a little more than that. And it comes from my great-grandmother in Egypt. She was a Greek woman who was in Egypt. And somehow this has made it through the generations across different countries, across different continents. And this is, of course, a Singer. Many people know the Singer as a sort of classic sewing machine. And one of the things that Singer did that made it such a global success was the fact that they took this technology and made it mass producible. So this was mass produced. And because it's what's known by economists as a durable good, so think of like a car that you purchase. A durable good means you keep it for a while. It's not like paper plates or food or gas or something, right? It's an investment. And because it's an investment, they did two things. One, they allowed for installment payments, kind of like you think of with a car. And two, a support program with salespeople and service people to continue to service it over the course of the life of this. So it reduced the uncertainty with the investment that you do. And that really helped the technology of this and the adoption of it take off over the late 19th and early 20th century.
How it became to be so incredibly popular. Now, any significance to the month of September with sewing as a whole?
No, actually, I don't know why it's September. That's a National Sewing Month. I could tell you this, that on for the fashion part, you were talking about it being popular. One thing to keep in mind, I have a piece of fabric here, is this really democratized fashion, by which I mean that it made fashion accessible to the masses. Before, you had to be wealthy to be able to go out to a tailor and have like this custom-made dress. Now, you could basically get parts from, remember, this Industrial Revolution, so different parts and fabric like patterns were available, commodified as they would say, so you don't have to do everything customized, but kind of like standardized. And so that standardization made things cheaper, made it accessible. Now you could take this machine, piece those things together, those standardized parts, and create your own dress. And so that made it so that was really popularizing, democratizing, accessible to a middle class that is rising during the Industrial Revolution. However, one final thing on this to consider, how did they go out of style? Well, what happened is that you had ready-made clothing. So for example, most likely the clothing that we're wearing, we bought it as this, not the parts that we put together. And that ready-made clothing in the 1920s, an era of mass production, the roaring 20s and kind of pop culture and increased industrialization, that made it so these things came out of style. Well, why would you, make this, with your hands when you can just buy the ready-made clothing, which is more available, standardized as the Industrial Revolution continues. And that's why somebody might remember that their grandmother had a sewing machine underneath a table or something, like underneath a nightstand, kind of hidden away. That's why, because it was coming out of style. So now you might have it for practical reasons, but it's no longer a status symbol, so you're going to hide it away.
Very interesting, fascinating. Well, as always, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Happy to have you. We'll be right back.